We're ready. Are you ready?
I don't know. I have no idea what I'm ready for. I think I'm ready, but you know, that's kind of the whole the whole point is you don't know what you're ready for, and so
until. But you've done this. You've run a couple of times. So
I've run a couple of times.
This is Tres Wittum. He's running for Congress in the 7th District of Tennessee for the seat that Mark Greeen is vacating prematurely. So it necessitates a special election. So this is all being done on the quick. Up until 4 months ago, my basement here, as I was telling you, was nothing but woodworking and lawn equipment and storage. About 4 months ago, I turned it into a boomer power studio to see if I might be able to influence people on the issue of our national debt, which I think is an existential threat to the U.S. Do you think it's an existential threat to the U.S.?
Well, there's no doubt that it's a exponential threat to the U.S. And I brought this up earlier in another interview that I had done was, you know, if we talk about defending ourselves from both foreign and domestic enemies, and a lot of times we're programmed to instantly think of literally the physical engagement of war. But if you understand war is a lot about resources. And America has been an economic powerhouse. It's allowed us to have strong family units. It's allowed us to have strong businesses. And allowed for a lot of other countries to invest in us because they believed in our way as well. So if you hate America and you want to destroy America, the number one way to attack it isn't with hijacking planes or maybe fiscal engagement, but fiscal engagement with an FISCAL, a fiscal engagement that could really destroy us. So destroying us from the inside, long story short is, the debt will destroy us from the inside.
Sure, there are lots of ways you can destroy America, and America might be destroyed lots of ways. There's only one way that we, the people, basically can destroy it. That is by spending ourselves to death, by running ourselves into debt so that we create a debt crisis that is as bad or worse than the Great Depression, leaving us even more vulnerable to all the forces that we believe ourselves to be vulnerable to now. So I think it's a threat that could eliminate the existence of the United States. So I want to make sure that is that something you agree with?
I think in some ways it may already have done that, as you kind of said. And that sounds really drastic, but when you really think about the creation of our country and the implementation of the money system and how that changed over time, how panics have encouraged markets or discouraged markets, obviously. You look at those things and it's very obvious that the good people that try to live by, because we're going to talk in regular people terms, because that's how we understand it. At a state level, they're talking about literally managing a state full of people, 7 million Tennesseans, right?
Now, regular people declare bankruptcy all the time, and they can come out of that fine. Can the U.S. come out of bankruptcy fine if it comes to that?
I would say the reason why they let people come out of that maybe just fine is they need the people working to keep moving the bigger system, unfortunately. And that's why I said if you bring it to a level, we the people look at things like regular people would, like common sense people, like, of course, you can't just spend your debt. Well, on the other side of this argument, they're trying to balance well, we actually do want them in debt. We don't want to be in that much debt, but we do want debt. But when do you do your house and say, well, we do want debt? I guess in some sense you say, well, I guess maybe when I buy a home, technically I go in debt.
But that's debt you intend to pay off. And this is debt we never intend to pay off. It's impossible for us to pay off all of this debt.
Yes.
The best we can hope to do is to keep it from growing so fast that we simply cannot service that debt any longer. And that's coming sometime ahead, I believe. How do we stop that from happening?
Well, I'm a little bit radical in this system because I do believe in shocking the system. And I guess, look, I'm a common guy. You know, I make common people money. I'm definitely not a billionaire, who I do think are largely in control. You have new type billionaires. Remember, the tycoons of the 1900s are now gone. The tycoons in the 1900s that created the economy that grew us to now, those folks are gone. There's a transfer of power and it's digital, right? So when you look at the people who have most of the wealth, they're new types of folks. These folks drive the economy in different ways. I'd tell you that data is gold, right? So when we talk about our money that we're talking about right now, anyways, I mean, quite frankly, this is a system that was put on America that we now feel responsible to almost keep afloat as people. And it trickles down to the regular people.
So what are you suggesting the solution is? Well, because do you believe, some people believe we can grow ourselves out of this debt, that we don't actually have to cut spending or increase taxes. Do you believe that?
It's like I said, I'm a little bit radical in the sense that I don't think we should put it all on the common people that work here in America, because, you know, a lot of this debt goes to other places anyways, right? But it always comes back to, how do they take from our pockets to keep a bigger system afloat?
But America has more money than the rest of the world put together.
Well, we have more opportunity, which creates money.
We have more money.
Well, but the money's inflated.
Our standard of living is higher. We spend more money. People spend more money. The government spends more money. There's in every way that you measure it, the United States and the people in the United States are the richest, and we spend twice as much money per capita on health care as other people. We can't afford that, can we?
Well, no, we can't afford. Can we afford to keep living the way we live? Yes, because we are. What funds it is the system in which we have. But I would tell you that system's corrupt, and it's been used on the people of America to keep paying for this corrupt system that's not benefiting the people. When you look at our healthcare system, it's like, you know, the thing is, it's the school, the healthcare system, it's just throw more money at it. The problem is our money is almost worthless. I mean, eventually we're going to inflate our economy so much that we look like some of these countries that have so much paper, it means nothing. So you're right. We're the richest as far as has most money. Quality of life in America. Look, I'm a proud American, and I have been to other countries, third world countries, and believe me, we do have it good. But again, we are playing a game of national debt to also keep a lot of other world banks and things open. So again, they want our debt. They're borrowing against our debt, and we're selling our debt because we believe we can raise the money, which allows us these opportunities.
But Americans own most of the debt.
But Americans
foreign countries don't own most of our debt. You could eliminate all of the debt that foreign countries own, and we would still have a debt to GDP ratio, yes, just with American-owned, publicly owned debt that is not sustainable. Our spending, isn't it our spending, our government spending on healthcare through Medicaid and Medicare and all the other healthcare spending done on the state level and national defense, aren't those big drivers of spending?
Of course. You know,
don't they have to be cut somehow?
I think you have to look. It's hard to say cut somehow, because here's the trick. They get you and they say they're cutting national defense or they're cutting healthcare.
Well,
right. Well, here's the thing. A lot of things. My point is, you got to re-examine what we're even paying, because a lot of it, when you talk to these providers and payers, we don't even know the prices to begin with. Right. It's just all
that is a huge part of the problem.
And what they do is they stuff. They stuff things in, because if you say anything about the national defense budget, well, now you're cutting defense. Well, simple things like I would tell you, look, when we talk about artificial intelligence, right, which is going to be a large part of national defense, when we have something like the new program that the president laid out, and then 2 days later they say, hey, listen, there's a program that wasn't $3 trillion. It was actually just like $44 million. Big time changes there. So again, when you look at the defense budget, which is that was the largest spending of 2024, right? No one's going to say cut the defense budget.
Why?
Because you just said cut the defense budget. It makes us sound weak. But the truth is, real defense might not be the loudest. Now, if the budget deflates, it might send a negative message to other countries.
Do you think the amount we spend represents how much?
No, I think people stuff. I think there's a lot of fluff and stuff. But the reason why, if you even look at the Doge, they didn't start with the defense budget. Okay. Because again, there's something about the defense. We don't want to tell anybody that we're going to lower our defense. But the truth is, strong defense might be actually looking at something financially.
We haven't learned how to describe spending cuts without benefit cuts. We have to. Can we cut defense spending without harming our national defense? Can we cut spending on Medicare and Medicaid without harming the beneficiaries who are enrolled in Medicare and Medicaid? I believe we can. Do you believe we can?
I certainly believe we can. The one thing too with the Medicaid, again, here they're using the vulnerable, the elderly, the healthcare. The truth is the healthcare system needs a lot of help anyways, right? And they're still throwing money at it. So the problem isn't necessarily the inflation of the money. The problem is the healthcare system. And like I said, if we just look at the prices to begin with, we already know there's two sides that probably aren't being as transparent with budgeters, right? Family budgeters, people are actually paying these bills, can afford. So
are people demanding price transparency? I don't hear people demanding price transparency. I'll give you an example. I've got a friend who goes to the doctor several times a month. And the last time he went, he said, they drew some blood for me. Somebody says, what, they take anything else? And he said, no, that was it. And I said, oh, they took money. He said, well, they didn't take any of my money. I don't have any money. They paid the bill. They better. I worked all my life. People think they have earned an unlimited amount of Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid. Why do we think that? Because politicians tell them they have.
Well, I think to be fair to the American worker, I think I have to sympathize with your friend. Said it's not that I'm saying, oh, everything should be paid for, but I'm tired of this country where we allow foreigners, for whatever reason they're here, and if something happens to them, yeah, you're right, we always pick the bill up. But there is folks out there that work really hard for things in this country and worked hard, and then they can't even afford the insurance, or they can't get help, and then they are stuck with a big bill, or they did the right things their whole life and they got sick, and now they've got some outrageous bill that basically says we're going to bankrupt you, and you don't have to worry about an inheritance tax. You're going to lose everything.
Do you actually think that we have a healthcare spending problem in this country because we spend too much on foreigners, on illegal aliens or other foreigners? Do you really believe that?
I think that there's a lot of like that. Like I said, the stuffing of the budget. Yes, I don't think it really goes to a lot of places that it probably should go. Unfortunately, it probably is a lot of politicians who have promised a lot of things under the healthcare umbrella that it does go to. Again, COVID, I would tell you, nobody wanted to be sick during COVID. And the good people, again, who it really, I'm one of those people, when you take advantage of the good people that just want to do the good thing, right? 9/11, they just wanted to do, I'm not a terrorist. You can look through my stuff, right? Yeah. We didn't realize we were being robbed of our data to build this digital world.
So if you're Congress or president, you take your ideas. What action follows those ideas that is going to get those numbers under control?
I think we really do. I would say the quick relief. Again, I just feel so strongly the only way you actually can push back on the banks, which I think maybe have gotten a few presidents assassinated. If you look at some of the interesting timelines, is when they start threatening to take us off kind of this system that has, in a lot of ways, expanded the U.S. and helped the U.S. But here we are again, where it just seems like it almost benefits a lot of other financial interests that are not necessarily American to keep us in debt and higher debt. And then they make it low enough, the interest rates low enough for us to keep paying. It's like, it's just
President Trump wants the interest rates to go lower. He's demonizing Powell because our interest rates, he thinks they're too high.
They are too high. They are too high.
Why are they too high?
Well, one, I mean, let's just talk about the U.S. debt. The interest rate on the U.S. debt is like $889 billion.
But our interest rates that we pay on that debt have been going down all of the time. I've got a chart here. I'd love for you to, let's see, where did I put that chart? Yeah, here it is. This is it right here. Let me show you something. Here's our spending gap between 68 and 2000. What year were you born?
I was born in 1987.
1987.
May 28th, 1987.
Between 68 and 2000, our spending gap was only 2.49% of GDP. The average spending was 20.83. The average income was 18.34. In this century, the average spending gap is 5.17% of GDP. In the 20th century, you know what's happened in the 20th century? Baby boomers. Right here. These are all the retirements. These are the baby boomer retirements. We are more expensive than the system that we built for the greatest generation, can't afford. Don't we have to change these systems and make them more affordable?
I think we do, but in the terms even of a market conversation to make it broader, I am afraid that because we find ourselves in these financial disastrous terms, markets also find solutions to sometimes disastrous terms. And in a digital world, who's to say that this system keeps going on very long? I mean, you actually do have folks that are dealing in cryptocurrencies and all different types of currencies. So when money starts leaving the US dollar and all of a sudden just goes to a reserve, because a lot of the argument is there's no reserve dollar other than a lot of folks use the US dollar as the reserve. What happens when they say, actually, you know what? They look like they lied, cheated, and stole from that so much that maybe this system that's digital that can't be corrupted might be a better system. And then all of a sudden America loses out. So I'm not sure what the future holds.
We got into these spending problems before anybody ever heard of digital media and the interest rates we've been paying. I wanted to show you this.
Of course, but I would tell you my point of the digital is this system, right, is different from the original system that America was set up on, correct?
Right.
So what happens when we change to another system is what I'm arguing. And I'm saying that could be digital, right, because it looks like that. I'm not saying that is. Maybe it goes back to gold, right? Maybe they say this digital can't be, who knows what it is, but I'm saying this system that we're talking about, that we've studied.
You sound hopeful that we can solve this problem without cutting spending.
I'm for cutting spending because the spending is, it's not just ridiculous spending amounts. And then it's like what you're spending on. It's things that you're just like,
we're spending things that are not producing.
Yes.
That aren't producing the benefit.
Yes.
That people are getting a benefit, but they're spending way too much to get that same benefit. And we could spend a lot less and get the same benefit. Or at least all of the healthcare experts who study have been researching countless ways to try to cut spending on healthcare. Tell us that we can do that. Maybe they're wrong. They think we can cut spending as much as 30% on healthcare without reducing any healthcare benefits. Maybe they're wrong. Let me show you this interest rate story. Interest on the national debt has grown to this far over the years. Here's what the interest rates have been doing. Here's the interest rates early in the years. Here's where they are now. So as our interest on the national debt has been growing, our interest rates have been falling all along the time. It is not because we're charging too much interest. It's because we're borrowing too much money. We're borrowing now $2 trillion a year, and we're going to be borrowing $2 trillion plus a year if we don't cut spending or raise taxes.
But as long as we keep borrowing money, my point is it's to keep us hooked. You just keep borrowing money, you got interest payments. So the point is that whether they're high or low, the payments just keep coming, right? So it's just long.
Well, you can't borrow money without interest payments, can you?
Well, of course. Well, I mean, I guess not. Well, I mean, you could.
Well, who would loan you money without getting something for it?
Well, not a businessman looking to make a bunch of money, but obviously.
Would anybody?
Well, I mean,
would you loan somebody money without?
I certainly have looned people money without asking for something back. Yeah. Well, friends, maybe we call them United States citizens, people that have built this country. Those would be friends that maybe we should be better to when we talk about it.
If we loan the country more money, they're just going to spend even more.
I'm not saying loan more money. I'm saying how do we stop this? And I'm not saying we should go borrow more money. Don't misunderstand me. I'm saying that I believe there is a system that is designed so that we keep paying and the borrower just keeps borrowing, because the more we borrow, the more their interest rate, even if it's lower, it technically still goes up because the borrow went higher. Right?
And I blame that system on members of Congress who can't say no to their constituents. Can you say no to your constituents?
I think it starts even before that. It's not really their constituents they're afraid of. They can't say no to the money and the big money that's put us in this debt.
So
they're selling us.
So you can run for Congress and win, telling people like me, I'm going to cut spending on Medicare and Social Security.
Well, unfortunately, I would tell you that what I'm advocating for isn't what the big money spenders want to come by a candidate and say, because I'll tell them no. I'll tell you yes, I'll tell them no. Now, again, when you talk about that, there are things that are appropriate that are spending that maybe some people aren't going to agree with me on, that I would believe are. I mean, I do believe we've got to figure out healthcare. I don't know if that takes more money. I think the system needs to clearly be looked at. So like I said, I'm not trying to give false hope or unreality.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt that there's a system being made. Again, the more money you borrow, even if the interest rate's low, if the money's higher, guess who made more money? I mean, it's just a thing. The system is designed to keep hardworking Americans paying outrageous amounts of money and almost get nothing in return. Again, just the interest payment on our debt alone.
But it's the taxpayer paying most of the money.
Absolutely.
Now. The customer's not paying the money, and because of that, they don't care what we're spending.
And again, go back to the illegal. I'm sorry, because it's the the responsible American taxpayer citizen, right? Because a lot of people might not even pay, but it's the people that actually are trying to be responsible, the good people that are being taken advantage of when they constantly see other countries
and
that are benefiting.
is getting narrower and narrower all the time. It's, we are forgiving about half the population. We're forgiving most of the money that the really big money people, billionaires, are making. They don't never spend taxes on any of that money. They put it in foundations and we keep that tax free forever, which I think is stupid, quite frankly. Let's change the subject briefly to Social Security. Do you have any good ideas for getting more bang for our buck out of Social Security? Seems like a pretty simple kind of pass-through system. We pay money in and we take money out. And it's as simple as that. And then we started putting more money in than we really needed so that we could grow a little bit of savings. Now we're draining that savings. And in 2033 or so, it's all going to be gone. And the money coming in will only pay for about 75 to 80% of the benefits, which, frankly, I've said, let them fall. This system was not made for our generation. Somebody's going to have to be the transition generation, and it ought to be baby boomers.
Well, that's hard to tell people.
Yeah,
right?
It's very hard.
I remember my grandfather who...
I'm telling people, I can do that because I'm not running for Congress.
My grandfather who served our country in war, I remember just, again, not advocating for cutting that, but he would be very serious with me about how dare they. We went along, again, the good people went along to something because they were sold something at a past Congress and a past generation that, quite frankly, we owe nothing to because we're not bound past, but it's something we've honored because it's something the American people agreed on that would honor the elderly. Again, now we have a whole new healthcare system with all new different challenges and problems. So one, I would have a hard time telling anybody, hey, look, I can't take your Social
Young
Security.
people have been telling me since the 1990s when I first started being a talk show host that they don't expect Social Security to be around when they retire. If they believe that, they should be preparing for that now. So when that happens, they should be more ready for it than my father's generation was, or your father's generation, either one.
I think there is a time period, maybe thinking forward, maybe there's a time period where we say anybody that's born in the year 2031, the program ended. But again, just go look at this budget, $889 billion in an interest payment. Don't tell the people that put the money into this country.
Because we borrowed $36 trillion
for what?
For health care and Social Security and national defense.
They told us health care, but we've learned in the pandemic it wasn't really health care, really was. It was a lot of other stuff, was my point. And again, when you look at this budget, that's why I'm saying it's hard to tell people you're going to do something when you look in this budget and find so much trash and just disgusting research projects, right?
Sure.
So how are you going to tell the honest people?
Those went in and did everything they could possibly do, and they're not going to get more than $1 billion out of it. That's 1/4 of one day's spending. You can't get
They didn't even cut the revenues off it, by the way. None of it. Again, it was just a charade. It was
the mandatory revenues. Mandatory spending makes up most of our budget. So it's going to take changes to the law to change that. Is it not?
Absolutely.
All right. So Congress says, okay, this mandatory spending, it's not mandatory anymore. This is all going to be discretionary spending. And every year we're going to set spending limits, and it's going to be up to healthcare companies and you, the consumer, to figure out how to live within those limits and give people what they need for less money. And
then let's be fair about prices. Then let's be fair and transparent about prices. It has to start there.
Absolutely. Price transparency is number one.
Correct.
Rationing. I looked into rationing. They do rationing in Europe. They don't get a lot out of it. They get most of it through price controls. And price controls comes out of my mouth like dirt. I hate price controls. I have started wondering if maybe because of the crisis that we face, an imminent threat, it's not an imminent threat, is a certain threat, but not an imminent threat. And in economics, things happen very slowly until they happen very quickly.
Very quickly.
So
We saw that with COVID, literally the shutdown of the world.
yeah.
Literally, we watched it happen.
And then we watched the helicopters fly over with money, dumping it on people who
Yes.
didn't need it to spend it, and driving
And now all of a sudden we're
inflation
just
up
like,
to 10%.
Go again.
And we're still there.
Yeah.
We're still spending the same amount of money on healthcare and paying back Social Security and national defense. We can't do it without spending cuts. We've got to get there. And
Well, again,
so we've got to be able to.
and
We've got to
again-
figure out how to tell people we can cut spending without cutting benefits, except in Social Security.
And again, I will tell you, because we're totally on the same page, and we both know that our base, the conservatives, they hear spending cuts because it goes on a mailer, right? Spending cuts for defense. But you and I both know that, yeah, but if we look through that budget, we can probably tell you there's a few things that doesn't look like what that is. That's unnecessary. But when you start calling it on a broad statement, cuts to this and cuts to that, well, that sounds very dangerous to people that it actually matters to. And again, the whole PR behind of cutting our defense, we don't want any of these other countries to realize America's, we're on full go mode on defense. We're just learning how to do it more efficiently and cost effectively. And actually, if we become cost effectively,
We'll become stronger.
we're
And if
beyond.
we become cost effective in Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security,
and let me throw
we'll
this
be
at you too. Again, not to keep talking about the digital age, but that is something I'm very interested in. I've written a book on the Digital Bill of Rights and why it's important, and it talks about again, healthcare is going to change because and I'm being hypothetical kinda because there are certain robots that do things. I guess I'm kind of talking in the George Jetson sense, right? But even Tesla's saying here shortly, very, very shortly, there will be a fleet of robots that are be able to do things like house chores. Well, eventually, for the folks that may need 24-hour assistance care, being able to afford a helper like that actually could function as an adult that is super intelligent. Healthcare is going to change and probably for the better in a lot of ways. There's some upfront costs, but again, even so, as we look at this whole format, the reason why I'm pushing is because people my age don't even own homes, right? And so if we don't figure out how to fix this at a people affordability level and stop worrying how to keep the whole world afloat, then we're going to constantly.
well, if we don't keep the United States afloat, you are not going to be afloat. You will lose all of your money.
Everything.
That digital money, no money will be worth anything if the U.S. has to default on its debt. And the U.S. will have to default on its debt if we don't get this gap closer together.
Yes.
Someday it will. It's not imminent, but it is certain. And you've agreed with that.
Yes, but like I said, remember the disruption that is coming upon us. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a crazy person.
Maybe AI
Maybe people
will,
watch this
maybe-
10
hey,
years from now
listen,
and they say the guy's crazy. But here's the thing.
and maybe
it happens
I
very
hope I'm
fast.
crazy. I hope I'm crazy. AI is going to happen very fast. And I have a lot of hope for AI. And I hope AI can reduce healthcare spending in magical ways. And it might be able to. And if it does, I hope Congress will take advantage of that and reduce the spending instead of figuring out new ways to spend even more money. Why do you want to be in Congress?
Well, I believe that we're living in a time, when I was young, I was told about a time when they would call good evil and evil good. And at 38 years old, not just at 38, but what I've seen over the short period of my life, I believe there's no doubt we're living in that time, or at least a time of that. And I have a really strong conviction to stand up and speak out the way I was raised. I mean, I talk about faith, family, fiscal responsibility, but also, with a deep emphasis and focus on affordability for housing and healthcare and food, common people stuff. I'm a common people guy. Again, I'm a single adult. I'm 38 years old.
What's your background? What's your professional background?
Well, I'm a communicator. I went to school for communications, media broadcasting, and I'm very proud to say that that's very important in the digital world. You got to learn to communicate, right? I spent 11 years working in the Tennessee Senate. I worked with the Speaker Pro Tem and the Senate Finance Ways and Means Chairman. And so I got to look at what Tennessee found important behind our appropriators, not because of who I was, but because who my boss was. I was involved. I sat behind the appropriators of our state for 11 years. So I believe I understand what Tennesseans care about from the checkbook. That opportunity also allowed me to answer a lot of constituent phone calls. And for some of us, this isn't to get rich. There's no money in
going into Congress to have more access to insider trading or to create laws that you could come home and live off of.
And to be clear and to be fair to those guys it's ridiculous. But when they come and tell you hey, we're going to do this, I mean, there's a great opportunity here, and then when they pass it, they know there's a great opportunity. So, it's not so much like they're deviously trying to screw people. It's that I guess they're the first ones in the market.
It'd be hard to turn down inside information.
Well, somebody, again, if they tell you this is, and you're smart enough to know this is brilliant. Yeah. Or that's really dumb. Yeah. And if they do this, their whole program's out. So to be but no, I mean, here's the thing. I can trade today. I can trade on my phone. I can trade on my laptop. Yeah. I enjoy trading. But Congress is about going to help the people. And unfortunately, again, because of our money system,
it's supposed to be anyway.
Well, remember,
but we're not helping people by spending this much money on them.
Well, Ben Franklin
told us. We might think we are, and they might want us to, but we're not.
No, and Ben Franklin told us, but he responded and said, "We gave you a democratic republic if you can keep it." And I say that the House was for the people, and the Senate was for the states, literally the state house. And unfortunately, I believe our federal government now, we have like state governments and a federal government that now just you have glorified governors in the Senate for 6 years.
And we have a dysfunctional Congress that's turned over all of its power to the president.
And it's just all the fight over the president.
And the president's accepted, from Obama to Trump to Biden to Trump, they've all accepted this power, more of it than they should have, right?
And it probably started in the 80s with when America really started reaching globally. We became a really global superpower in a lot of positive ways, and I'm excited for, and I'm proud to be an American. But in some ways, it became almost a different entity to where other countries now understood there's a system over there that's democratized, that believe in capitalism to where we can take our money, just a little bit of money we get together, and can pervert their system and go implement our people in their system and change their laws with just a little bit of money. So Americans who we appreciate our American economy and are proud of it, we've also allowed it to be overtaken. And so there's people that don't love this country that understand the system probably better than a lot of Americans, and they're ruining us because of it. And that's what I firmly believe. So when we talk about this, again, there are a lot of different moving parts. But the big thing for me is there's a lot of hardworking Americans that put in this country that are losing, and there's Americans that are putting in that are getting not enough
One
back.
Final thing, and we're going to run out of batteries in our microphones pretty soon. Can you say no to Trump if you need to?
President Trump didn't endorse me the first 2 times. He endorsed my opponent 3 times, and I was better than all those picks. So President Trump would need to maybe explain to me his decision if I didn't agree with it, because quite frankly,
if he agreed to endorse you and you thought he was wrong about something, could you say so and say so publicly?
Well, I think you have to be honest, and I think one thing he would respect about Trace is outspoken and he's honest. Now, respectfully, because you're talking to the President of the United States, but I think he'll like Trace because I'm an honest, straight shooter, and I tell it like it is, and he's a guy just like that. So, he would appreciate, maybe he would work my no to an agreeable yes, because he's a deal maker.
He hasn't appreciated a lot of people who have given him.
Well, they're nasty about it and don't do the right thing sometimes.
Not all the people that he fired. I doubt if they were nasty about it, at least before he fired him. That's a subject probably way to save for another day. Trace, thank you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you
so much. I appreciate you, Ralph.